So here I've set up the bike, take off the shrouds to show what the motor looks like when it's set up correctly. I'm using a console. You may have a desk version of this bike, but this console and that desk version should be the same. So right here you can see I'm ready for a manual workout. I'm going to push the start button, and what should happen at the start is this is at level 6, so right now this motor is turning to level 6 position, and you'll see where level 6 should be. So basically up and down along the box is where 6 o'clock position is where that should be about for level 6. It just happens to be 6. So what happens when you go up in resistance, I'm going to go up to 14 or 16 in this case. The little button here is a little bit around 4 or 5 o'clock position. And now I'm going to go down in resistance. Right in here I'm going to level 1. If you can see on the screen. If that helps any. So level 1, and now it's around an 11 o'clock position along the box. So this is how it should be working normally. I'm going to go back to level 16, and you can see how it operates. And just so you can see what's actually happening, so this, we're focused on this turning. But down here, there's a magnet bracket that you'll see move. So focus right here as I go down to level 1. As I go down to level 1, this bracket will pull away from this flywheel. It'll make popping noises because of this spring right here, but that's how it should work. And going up to level 16 again, these magnets will come closer to the flywheel, and this bracket will move up. So this is all normal operation, everything's fine. So what I've done with my console here is I've put these rainbow ribbons between them. So these colors all correspond to the colors on here, just for the sake of organization. And they're all connected on the other side of the ribbon here to this white ribbon. I've made sure that the little connector piece right here, little tab, that would match up with the tab over here are on the same side of the ribbon, so the connections are as they should be. I did this so that I could show what happens when particular little pins, these little metal shiny parts right here, if there's a disconnect between them. Because what can happen is that these little silver bits right here, they could get pushed in when the connection's made because of alignment issues. But you know, this is what it should look like. Good. I'm going to now remove some pins from this side first to show what happens. So right now you can see everything's working fine. It says level 16, bars, time is running. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove one of these black pins. So right now the connection to this lead right here has been severed because I pulled the little connector out. Now when I try to change resistance levels, going down from level 16, you'll hear nothing happening here anymore. And then the console will give an E1 error. You can see right there in the top corner it says E1. So it could just be that one of your connectors on this side of the ribbon cable got pushed in. The same situation can happen if the white one is pulled out too. And I'll show that. So with the white one pulled out, I'm going to reset the console. And you could hear nothing happened on the motor because I haven't started to work out. But starting the workout immediately gave me an error 1 because the motor isn't communicating with the console correctly. But if I put this back in, and push reset, you could hear normally when the console resets, this starts turning. So now because the white and the black are reinstalled, it's working as it should be. Because when it starts up, it'll automatically go to this position, the level 1 position. And now that it's started up normally, it's going to go to the level 6 position. So this is normal operation now that these connections have been made. One situation that can happen is when you pull this gray cable out. and you try to restart the console. So here I will reset it. This gray wire, which is also gray on this end, so gray and gray, have been severed, and you hear nothing happened this time. I'm going to start a workout, and it's trying to do its thing, but what's happening is now this is going to rotate into a position that is completely incorrect. It should never have rotated up in this direction. And now it gave an error 1 again. So if you have a situation like this, it could just mean that a wire along this gray line got severed, at least on this side of the cable that connects to the console. I'm going to reconnect this. Now that's reconnected, I'm going to reset the console, and then you'll see that it immediately E2 errored, which is a different error code than before. But here at this position, you would have seen this move slightly in the clockwise direction. So I'm going to reset again. And it errored E2 again. But this is slowly rotating back to the way it should be, now that I've made sure all the connections are connected. Errored again. Errored again. But what's happening is it's slowly returning to a range that it should be in. I'm just going to keep resetting. It may take up to like 7 resets. And there, now that all the connections were made, and we saw that it was slowly rotating back in this direction because everything was fixed, the connections made again, it's returning to its normal operation. Now it's going to go back to that 11 o'clock position because it's resetted and the workout hasn't started. I'm going to start a workout again. You'll see that it's going back to its level 6 position, which will be right around this area, right there. And it'll operate normally now. So now I've removed the 4th connector from the connector here to break this connection and see what happens there. So what happens is when you reset, it'll error 2, and this will slowly rotate in this direction. It may be that if you reset it too many times, it may have gotten to a point where it's jammed up on the opposite way. So we'll see what happens as I check more. So now I've come to the 5th connector here and removed the blue cable. It's the same blue over here. And I keep getting E2 error. So same situation where this one will rotate this way a little bit, but stop and not go too far. So here what I've done now is from this side, I've removed the connector, the green one, for the green wire over here. So now when I push reset, it does its normal thing of that, but now this isn't moving. Oh, well, that's already at its position it should be for a start. So I'm going to push the start button to get it to work out. So now it's going to level 6 position. And that looks about right. And I'm going to go up to level 16, and that's still functioning, no problems. I'm going to go down to level 1, and it all seems to be working, functioning properly. So this cable probably won't cause any problems for you, so we could just move on from there, but just noting what it does. So now here I've come to the 7th pin from this side. So it's a yellow cable on this side of the connector, and also the yellow jumper cable I put on. So it's disconnected, and I'm starting it up. It's acting normally. It's going to level 6 position. Okay, that looks right here. I'm gonna go up to level 16 I mean, and then looks right. No error issues. Gonna go down to level 1. That works correctly. So the green and yellow wires could maybe just be pulse wires that weren't implemented on this product, but they're just there because they're standard for the console. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to disconnect the orange one and see what that one does. So here, without this connector, the 8th one from this side, I think it's the orange cable, there is no power to the console. So that would be a completely different issue than E1 or E2. Here, plugging that one back in, you hear the console fire back up. And then removing the red one will probably have the same effect of shutting off the console. So there, the second to last one is out, and yeah, the console is not on. So if you have a power issue, it would be associated with the connectors on this side. But we're focused on E1 and E2 issues right now. So there, it's on. And now I'll remove this gray brown one, or on this side it's like a burgundy color. Start this up, see how it acts. Oh. So that's what's going on there. I'm going to go up to level 14, see if that causes problems. I keep saying 14, but it's 16. So that's acting correctly. Going to go down to level 1, see if any issues come up with that one connector not being in. So no. So that connection wire is no real issue. It still operates, still working, clock is still running. So that's everything about the console side of the connections for these things. So if you're getting any of those errors and you notice the pattern that's happening here, check the specific cable for any sort of like damage, maybe got pinched along the way during use. Check for any of these pin leads not being fully out like this. And then also on this side, what can happen is these little pins on the inside, which are protected by this plastic wall, they could be bent, they could be pushed in. Sometimes the glue that holds them in will break, and then the pin will actually get pushed in when this side of it gets put in. So then it gets pushed in and then doesn't actually make a connection, but it looks like it's fully seated. So check to see if all the pins are about the same height. You can see right here that this pin sort of disappears beneath, but I think we established that that was a not important pin when connected. So here I want to see what happens when one of these blue or purple wires, I think it was, that was giving error 2 and making this rotate slightly in the clockwise direction. So what I want to check is what happens, because this is a maximum or minimum spot. This is level 1 position. So if this thing rotates that way, when this is disconnected during E2, it may also cause another issue, which I just want to visualize here for the camera. Okay, there at error 2. And error 2 again, and it's rotating this way slightly. I'm just going to keep resetting that a few times to see what happens. Because as this rotates, that means that this bracket down here gets pulled away just a little bit more. Because every time it error 2 is that beeping, it pulls a little bit more. And there is a lot of space for it to pull back. But I just want to visualize what happens if maybe you have this connection issue where one of these middle connectors isn't seated correctly, and you end up with your little silver cylinder in that position. That means that your console may have this connection issue. And just to visualize what happens here, because every time it pulls back just a little bit more. And here it's getting closer to 12 o'clock position if you take the block as the guide for the clock. Okay, so if you end up with a thing where this looks like it's straight up and down, that or beyond that direction. It could mean that one of your little wire connectors there in the middle is not seated correctly and is being an issue. Here I'm just going to push this connector back in. Okay, there it's back in. I'm going to reset the console. And start a workout. And once the pin is seated correctly, the motor goes back to working the way as it should. And let's just make sure that it goes to level 6 position, as we've seen before. And go up to level 14, see if that goes up to level 14 position. You just want to make sure that that error we were having that kept pulling this back didn't affect the motor or the console program in any way. And it looks all fine, so we know what that looks like now.